Welcome to The Straight Stitch, a podcast about sewing and other fiber arts. This is episode 39, and my name is Janet Szabo. I'll be your guide as we explore all things sewing. We are in the middle of June here in Montana, but you wouldn't know it by looking out the window at the weather. One of the forecasters in Spokane noted this morning that today we are simultaneously under a winter storm warning in one part of the country and an excessive heat advisory in another part of the country. So in Missoula, Montana, which is 2 hours south of us, they are under a winter storm warning, and there are predictions for 1 to 4 inches of snow in the valleys and up to 6 to 10 inches in the mountains. We aren't under any advisories, but yesterday morning when I woke up, I had a moment of panic because it went down to 31 degrees Fahrenheit, and my husband and I were out at 5 a.m. putting covers on the squash and the tomatoes. Our last frost date is the end of May, and usually waiting until Memorial Day weekend to plant is a safe bet. But we did get 3 inches of snow on June 10th one year. This, however, is the latest that I can ever remember it being like this. And in 31 years of living in Montana, I don't think we've ever had a winter storm warning in the middle of June. So that's what's happening here. My tomatoes and squash will stay covered until Wednesday when it's supposed to warm up a little bit. And I can feel a little bit better about leaving them uncovered at night and not having to worry about going out there in the wee hours of the morning to cover things up. I did get some sewing done this week. I finished a project that I started a couple of months ago. It's the Portsmouth tote by Kloomhouse. Kloomhouse is a Portland company, and I have made several of their patterns. They are extremely well done. They're extremely well written. I did the Slabtown backpack a couple years ago, and that was a fun and challenging project. The Portsmouth tote was languishing partly because my industrial necky, which sits here in my office, has a broken tension assembly, and I need to get that fixed. And my Juki 1541 has a servo motor, which came from the factory set at a very high speed, and I'm fairly proficient with industrial machines. I have an industrial serger with a clutch motor, and I have no trouble sewing on that one. But the speed on the Juki was so high that I just didn't want to try and do any sewing on it unless I was doing miles and miles of straight seams. Unfortunately, the servo motor had instructions associated with it that had been badly translated from Japanese, and I could not make heads or tails out of how to slow that machine down. So I asked on the Vintage Industrial Sewing Machine group on Facebook and got some helpful information and was finally able to slow the machine down, although in the process I messed up the needle up-down setting. I had it set to stop with the needle down, and now it's stopping with the needle up, but I don't want to monkey around with it right now. It's slow enough that I can sew short sections. So there was some top stitching I had to do on the Portsmouth tote that I really needed to be able to stitch slowly so that I could make it look nice. So I finished the Portsmouth tote. I did the 2 expansions that come in the expansion pack. I added zipper flaps, and I also added a lining, and that has now been put into service as my knitting bag. I keep a bag of knitting with me all the time. It has a prayer shawl in it. I knit during the sermons at church. I knit during meetings. I've knocked out quite a few prayer shawls over the past 14 or 15 years, just knitting in odd moments here and there. So the Portsmouth tote is now my new knitting bag, and I made it out of some Kloomhouse waxed canvas. So I think it'll be a nice, sturdy, and durable bag. The other project I finished that I'm totally thrilled about was the New Look 6543 pattern. And this is a top that I've had in my stash for a while. It's a simple woven tee pattern with bust darts and I thought it would be good for using up some of the stack of rayon wovens I've got. I have a lot of rayon challis. So I took that pattern out and figured out what size I needed to make. But here's the kicker. And this is what I try to communicate to my students in my fitting classes. I had this pattern and I could have made the size that corresponded to my measurements, but I also know, having made myself a bodice sloper and taken a couple of fitting classes, that I am so long in the torso that I need to do a couple of things before I trace a pattern. And the first one is to lengthen the pattern. So I generally lengthen the bodice of any pattern that I'm working on by 2 to 3 inches, usually closer to 3 inches. That's how much longer I need to have it. So I did that. I lengthened the bodice, and then I had to reposition the bust darts because my torso being longer means that my bust is a little bit lower than on most patterns. So I repositioned the bust darts, and then I made a muslin of my altered pattern, and it fits perfectly. There's literally nothing that I would change about the fit. The only disappointment I had with that top, and I'll still wear it, but I bought the fabric at Pacific Fabrics on one of my trips to Seattle, and it was a really pretty white background with blue flowers on it. But when I washed it, and I always wash in cold water with a couple of color catchers, even though I did that, the blue ran all over the white background and turned it sort of a sickly gray color. So it isn't as fresh and bright as it was when it came off the bolt, but I will still wear the top because it fits well. And I specifically used that fabric for a muslin because I knew I was going to be disappointed in the fabric, so it really didn't matter to me that I was using it as a muslin. But now that I have this top pattern that fits really well, I've added it to my tried and true pile of patterns, and I will be making a few more. It has a couple of variations. There's a V neckline. I made the round neckline. There's a V neckline, and there's also a sleeveless variation. So it makes a great summer top. I don't know if any of the rest of you have noticed, but I've been getting lots and lots of emails from Joann Fabrics about clearance sales and things being marked down, and it just seems like they are trying to clear the decks. And I hope that that means that they will be bringing in some quality merchandise and less plastic crap from China, but that remains to be seen. I've just been struck by how deeply discounted things seem to be. So our local Joann store seems to have gotten its act together. I was in there a few days ago, and it's very neat and very tidy and very clean, which is a huge departure from the way it's been for the past couple of months. So I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that that's a good sign as well. I want to get right into today's interview. The guest that I have today is Anne Graham, and she works for Patagonia. And when she contacted me through the guest form and asked if I might be interested in having her on the show, I jumped at the chance because what she does for Patagonia is repairs. And not only is that a timely topic because a lot of people in my listening audience are interested in repairing their own clothing or upcycling or things like that. And Anne does this for a living now as a second career. And we had a fascinating conversation, and I want to share that with you. I do have to apologize. The interview was recorded right after I was sick a few weeks ago, and so I still sound like I'm all stuffed up. I think that's better now, but when I recorded the interview, I still sounded kind of stuffy, so I apologize for the way I sound in the interview, but Anne does most of the talking anyway, so that's fine. And I hope you'll enjoy this interview with Anne Graham about her experiences as a repair person for Patagonia. So my guest today is Anne Graham, who lives in Los Osos, California, on the coast of California. And Anne contacted me because She is a seamstress for Patagonia and does a lot of their repair work, and thought that we might want to hear about what she does and how she does it. And I thought that was a great idea. So welcome to the podcast, Anne.
Hey, thank you for having me.
This will be a great conversation. I usually start out by asking my guests how you learned to sew, when you learned to sew, how old were you, who taught you?
Well, I think that I'm probably like a lot of people in that I taught myself. My mother knew how to sew, but even though I must say that I'm in my 60s, okay, so I'm an older person. This is a more traditional situation, but my mother was not very domestic, so she was not my teacher. My grandmother wasn't my teacher. I was my teacher, and but alternately, there's a lesson for us too, is that I was allowed. She didn't care if I used her sewing machine. Everyone had one in their house. And so I used it. And so I took the patterns, which had pictures that showed me what to do, and then I did it. So I taught myself, and I had a paper route so I could get money to buy fabric. And that has been a lifelong pattern. It's been fabric since then. So I was a kid. I think I got a picture of myself wearing this dress, and I'm so proud of it because it had like squirrels and turtles and stuff on it. So I was probably about 8 or 9, old enough to understand. And so I was a kid. This has been a lifelong thing, and it's been a source of creativity since about that age. But I taught myself.
And is your job with Patagonia, is that a second career, or is that, have you?
Yeah, you got it. Okay. It's hard to make a living in sewing, but also I never considered it something I would do for a career. My career has been in the law enforcement telecommunications field. So basically, I was a police dispatcher until my center closed. And then I went and took a lateral transfer within the state of California. That's who I worked for at the end. So state of California had a historical home that was an art museum. And I gave tours, and then I became a supervisor there. It was a very satisfying career. But, I needed to have a job that paid me well enough and that also had a pension, and I was able to invest, so I'm able to retire. I only took on a job like this in my retirement. And I guess I should say how that happened is I ended up in Reno, Nevada, and I was working at a historical home as a assistant curator for the county of Washoe, which is kind of outside of the city of Reno, Nevada. And then I got laid off. I'm like, oh my God, I'm out of work. And I saw a temp ad for a seamstress at a repair facility, and I thought, well, how hard could that be? And so I took the job, and it was for a company I didn't even know who they were because I don't do sports and I'm not very athletic. So it's this company called Patagonia, and they do outdoor gear and clothing. And so anyway, I took this job thinking it'd be not too hard because I know how to sew, whatever, but it was very hard. It was a huge life lesson in every way possible. And I ended up really loving it. I love them. I like the company. My coworkers were amazing. I learned a lot about life, about from people who I work with, many who are from other countries, other cultures. And so I had this tremendous opportunity given to me, and I'm so grateful for it. I'll just one more thing is that for a lot of people, sewing is not your career. And I think that's totally fine. You don't have to make your living off of this. This is something I did for myself and for my own enjoyment all this time. But it was also alternately super satisfying to get paid for the labor of my hands, the work of my hands, to be a craftsperson. I'm eternally grateful for this opportunity to do this at least once in my life, to be recognized for this skill, not for my typing ability, my ability to use computers, my ability to find criminals through the National Crime Information Network, stuff like that. To like be recognized for something that you feel you really are all along.
So when you initially started with them, you were working at their facility in Reno?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, yeah. I
but
was a
now
temp
you're in
seamstress.
California, but you still work for them.
Yes.
They must have, I want to say, subcontractors. Is that sort of what
Mhm.
you
Well,
do?
I have been a contractor for them, but I've also been an employee. And that's what I am now. So it ended up being that I returned back home to my place in California, and it was right about the time they were starting this new program where they wanted to have the repair part of their company emphasized a little bit more, part of the marketing division. And I said, hey, how about let's take people out on the road, go to special events, promote the company, and promote the idea of repair. Teach people how, help them, show them, do it on the spot, any kind of repairs. And I said, well, I am all about that because I was free from working really hard in the workshop there. I'm back in California and my children are grown. I don't need to be working 40 hours a week and I'm pretty free. So they're like, yeah, you're perfect. So I ended up going all around the country like a rock band, fixing stuff from coast to coast. And it's been amazing. So you need to have the skills, right? But you also have to have the ability to travel, which is not always combined. So it's perfect for me. I like traveling too.
When you go to these events, do you have a sewing machine with you? What are you demonstrating?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. We have sewing machines. And in fact, it's been ever changing, but yeah, we have one single needle industrial sewing machine. We usually had a second, like a zigzag machine that can do all the other things and maybe one other one. So we had one heavy hitter and one mildly heavy hitter. And then we had a whole array of other tools to do things that don't require sewing machines because not all repairs involve sewing machines. So some of it is just, pliers and X-Acto knife, all kind of stuff, tenacious tapes, which are repair tapes, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, we're pretty well outfitted in this small shop and it's very unique looking. If anyone is interested in this, you should look at the program called Wornwear. That's what it's called. It's called Wornwear. And there's photographs on Instagram of that old vehicle. It looked like a Hobbit sewing shop. We've got other ones too, but those are some fun times. My coworkers are amazing. I just loved them all the whole time. It was hard work though, but it was really fun.
Are you still traveling or not? Not so much.
Yeah, I still am. Not as much, but because that's kind of a logistical nightmare, I'm sure, is getting us from coast to coast, stopping along the route. That's a lot of miles. It's expensive and difficult, but I still do it. But we do more like a James Bond situation where we like go in, do the event, and then we go out. And I still do it on occasion. And but that first couple of years of this was a different experience, but both are really fun. But yeah, I still do it. And I do it as an employee of Patagonia. So for sure.
So what are some of the most challenging repairs that you've done?
I have to say that my most challenging repair is also the most common repair. I don't know how many times I'm going to repair this item. It's going to be hard every time. And that's jeans. Denim jeans are hard because the body, especially where people need the repair the most, is at the crotch area. And it's thick material. It's curved. It's goes 3 dimensions, 2-dimension patches, 3-dimension body, thick seams, delicate fabric, and a delicate location. You gotta do a really good job so it's comfortable. They are most difficult repairs. I do them all the time, but I never go into it without going, all right, here we go. And I try to do that. So that's the most difficult. The next question is, well, what is the most challenging? I think they are as well, but I think that challenging fabrics are usually those that are super worn, like knit fabrics that are really, really thin. And so there's all kinds of techniques to deal with both of these situations. My particular specialty is knit fabric. So I've done so many fabrics that are like sweaters at the underarm, or, I'm a knitter. I love knitting. And so I'm particularly fond of doing those, but I understand the fabric a little bit. So I usually do those when we all have our specialties, but that's probably mine. So the most challenging, I'd say, worn fabrics of all kinds, threadbare. Sometimes it's not even possible.
I just repaired 2 of my husband's pairs of work pants yesterday because the crotch blew out.
Mm-hmm.
And I have trained him that he needs to bring them to me before it reaches catastrophic failure, because when it reaches catastrophic failure, I may not be able to fix it. So he's
okay, that's what I mean.
Better.
And my thoughts and prayers are with you in this difficult time, because yes, I'm very
he's gotten much better.
But also it's just the nature of jeans. And it's such an amazing garment that everybody wears them. And I understand this, but if anyone out here is listening to this and you're like, man, this is so hard. Yeah, it is. Okay, it is. But it's possible, but it's difficult. So
What
that's
if,
my most challenging, and it's never going to not be my most challenging.
do you, when you do the knit garments, are you using a serger? Or are you doing it on a sewing machine?
I do a sewing machine. It's any mechanical sewing machine, but my favorite repair stitch for knit is a 3-step zigzag. And honestly, I really should demonstrate this more, but uh, I use it to patch that hole, or there's a ways to repair them by uh, just basically sealing up the tear and then overstitching it with a 3-step zigzag. And I use a stabilizer on the underside, a adhesive sulky, like it sticks on there. So if you're stitching over it, then it comes off and you can pull it free. Depends on how um, big of the hole it is. If it's a really big hole, I just patch it with other fabric, other knit fabric. And that happens a lot. So, but it ends up being quite a lovely repair and very useful. So it can be done. But I call this process the devil's dance. It is like a devil's dance, because if you make too many holes, you're not gonna make it worse. And so I do this delicate devil dance in the most unusual of circumstances, in the cold, heat, poor lighting, also. But if I can do it, anyone can. So so I consider that a good repair. But they're not a beginning repair. It's like an intermediate or an advanced repair. Knitwear is kind of tricky, but it can be done. You know, heck, I just repaired some of my long underwear. These are merino wool, super soft, but they cost me a fortune. They were a lot. I want to say they were like $90 for these long underwear, but I literally wore them every day. They were amazing. The best thing I bought from Patagonia, probably. And I got a hole in it. And of course, I'm going to fix that. Who would not fix that? So I did this on my own repair. And so I kind of get why a lot of times you can't take things in. In fact, we didn't accept base layers as part of health law policies. So you have to do your own. This is one you will probably end up doing your own. And so you should learn how to do that. Anyway, knit
Wow, I
repair.
didn't know that. That's a
Yeah.
that's a law.
It if it isn't, it should be. I know that it was our policy, because just like when you're trying on garments, undergarments in a store, it's just
Sure.
not good to be having just that exposure. Yeah, we should just have that be done by yourself. So base layer, things that touch the body, base layers are not okay. And we also ask people to wash things before they came in, and most people are very good about that. But it's easier to repair things that are clean. So
Yes.
that's a thing, but base layers are not. But um that gets into like what we repair. I think that's maybe your next one, is like, what's the most interesting of repairs?
Yes.
And these, because these things are close to your body and they're close to your life, and it's also, a lot of these are very close to your heart as well. So clothing is part of our everyday life, and so we get a lot of emotion into this sometimes, and that 100% ties into the most interesting things. And for me, my most interesting ones are this group of people, which to back up, I'm not an athlete, so I didn't really know about these sports. I have since come to love and appreciate so much about this, and even done myself some of them. But my favorite and most challenging are the rock climbers. These people, oh my God, the audacity of what they do. They go up mountains, their bodies touch rocks all the time. They're stretching their mental and physical capabilities to the limit. And so, of course, their clothes get completely trashed. So they're extremely challenging to do, but I just find them fascinating as to how they did the damage. So whenever I get a chance to talk to them about it, it's like, well, what happened here? And and also I get answers like, yeah, yeah, I slid down this, or I could see hurt, like they got stitches where that was on their shoulders or whatever. I go, yeah, okay. But also I really appreciate how much they love their equipment, and they're so emotional about it, that it's my most challenging, because it involves many layers of fabric. It often involves the classic frayed fabric, torn, and a hole, and it's 2 layers thick. It's really, these are hard. Okay, they take time, but because they love it so much, I'm doing it. And the second group that is similar, in fact, there's quite a bit of a crossover of this, and that's the through hikers. These are people that hike really long way, and they are so, everything that they carry is so important to them that if we come across a through hiker at an event, I will 100% set aside everything and fix their things because they need it so much. That, and also they're just so cool about what they do. I just love it. I would not do it because I mean, I've only slept outside one time, but I do like hiking, but like not like that. This is so much. That's something I should do though. Really, I need to. They're encouraging me. But anyway, so they are so particular about their gear and their things, and they need them so much that I really like them too. So I guess that's kind of challenging and interesting. It's not the repair that's interesting. It's the people who bring things to me that are interesting.
And the clothing is telling a story.
Oh, 100%.
I'm just curious, do you try to do, when you're mending things, is it visible mending? Do you try to make it invisible? Is that a balance that you have to strike, or you just do what needs to be done to get the item back in service?
Okay, now that is an amazingly good question. And that's one that is a frequent conversation amongst all of us. And I work with a lot of very young people, and we even have different opinions about this. So my background is with the repair center, and our repairs are absolutely not visible. We are restoring those garments to the way they were. We don't do any artistic interpretation. It is strictly that. When we're out on the road and I've got the owner right in front of me, I ask them, which one do you want? Because I like both ways. I think there's a time and a place for each one. I am very old school. I'm very particular about, say, closely matching the materials, making sure this is very sturdy, that it's comfortable, that it's durable, matching thread, matching fabric weights. I'm very strict. And you can ask my partners. They give me a hard time about this because I'm kind of old. I'm the OG. Okay. But ultimately, what I've gotten from them is, and I've thought about this myself, is that, you know what? There is nothing wrong with having a little fun with your clothes. If for whatever reason, now this garment needs to be altered because it's damaged, and you think that it's time to let it be a little bit more informal and more fun, well, that's fine. And when we have someone there, I do it. And at first I would put these really weird colors on because, first of all, I never can tell what people are going to say. They throw me every time. So I give them a whole list of, or a whole group of fabrics in which they can choose for a patch, for example. And I let them choose the one, and I'm usually wrong. That's what I would think, but I do it. And you know what happens? It comes out great. It ends up looking amazing. And so I've learned that is one of the best lessons I've learned is to just, you know what, lighten up a little bit. And as long as my provisions of quality are there, the artistic nature of it has been a great revelation, and it's kind of fun. Now, some garments are very formal and you don't want to change it, or they're very personal and emotional that you don't want it different. You want it the same. That's one time. But if this has now been repaired many times and it's okay to have this feel something that you want to have a little fun with, well, that's absolutely great too. So both ways, I think, as long as you are strict about the quality, make sure you do it properly, that it holds up, because this repair should be a repair, not a temporary fix. It should be a fix. Yeah. But yeah, both ways are amazing. That's been a revelation to me.
That's really cool. What advice would you have for people who want to start repairing their own clothing? Because
I think you need to get yourself some good equipment first. Well, because if you want to do a repair, it needs to be a repair. This is kind of going on the next one here, is that you need to learn some hand stitches if you're going to do it by hand, and understand about how to do each individual thing. And I don't really know how to sum that up in just a short time, because it's taken me decades to learn how to do every repair, because where it is, what the damage is, when you should repair, when you shouldn't. You know, all this is kind of complicated, but there is a tremendous amount of information out on the internet. There are books about this. So get yourself some information, get yourself some basic tools like needles, like different kinds of thread, like different kinds of needles, like a little patch kit of denim, of flannel, of nylon fabric or cotton fabrics, things that are all different types. Save your old cotton t-shirts, save your things that you cannot wear any longer. You don't have to throw them away. The next level is a patching material. it saves other things. And I also suggest getting yourself a zipper kit. Like I get one at the fabric store the first time, but get out there and get yourself a basic zipper kit with all different kinds of pulls and stops and things like that. Because zippers are the other most common repair, and you can do that one. You can do pretty satisfyingly yourself. Seriously, I almost when I have one like that people bring up to me, I try really hard to get it ready, let them do the last step, because there is almost nothing more satisfying than replacing a zipper pull, and now your broken zipper is now working. And I want them to feel that, because then they will now understand that you have the power to fix things yourself. And this was not that bad. Some are, but most are not. And this is one great example. So a zipper kit is one, a scrap pile, some threads, some needles, a decent pair of scissors, and access to some helpful information somewhere, like a book or online source. But I kind of like both. I like having something that's not online all the time, so you have a kind of quick reference to know what you need to search for. You know what I mean?
Yep. Go
I
ahead.
thought of one thing. The most obvious is I'm a huge proponent of having a sewing machine. I love sewing machines, but also they are a very powerful tool. And I know hand sewing is a way to go to learn, but it's like using a screwdriver all the time. You need to get yourself a drill, okay? If you want to make something, a sewing machine. They don't have to cost a lot of money. I see them in thrift shops all the time. I was out yesterday. I saw two of them. Both were $20. Both would have been fine. Kenmore's from the 1970s. They're amazing. If it doesn't work, get it fixed. So I think you need to have a sewing machine if you're serious about it, even if you don't do it all the time. But that way you can make something like a jean repair, a long lasting repair. If you want to do decorative sewing on top of it or as an accent, that's okay. In fact, it looks amazing when you do both. Like you're super strong, but also has a lot of flair to it. So that's my machine.
I am a
That's
big
my other tool.
fan of vintage sewing machines. They don't make them like they used to.
Oh, me too. And also I also think it's an economical choice as well. Almost everybody has one around there.
Sure.
And this is a way you can get started on it. They are often very simple to operate. So not hard. They're simple, they're inexpensive. And then you can say, hey, I'm ready for the next step if you want to go farther. If you don't, and you just want to do simple repairs for the rest of balance of your life, that's okay too. But if you decide, yeah, I really like this and you want to move up, then you'll know kind of what you want to do. It is not unlike any other thing, like tools, like for carpentry or cooking tools or a car or anything. It's good to kind of start simple. Sewing's hard enough, just keep the machine simple. So I'm a big fan of these older machines that I see all the time. And I have a personal orphanage of them that numbers in the many, 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 that I fix them and give them away to people who want them, or sell them to get parts for others, or just use them because they're just kind of fun too. That's a side topic though. That's a whole other podcast. And sewing machines.
I have an orphanage as well, and I'm going to start calling it an orphanage because
yeah, people give them to me. I don't know if this happened
Yes.
to you, but I've literally opened up my front door and they're there with a note saying, please take me.
Yes.
It's my neighbors. It's a small town. They know me.
Yes, I have had the same experience. So it sounds like you enjoy teaching.
Well, I'm not that much of a teacher, but I guess that's a topic that came up too, is I'm more of a doer and I'm not confident enough to teach, but that has got to change because people need to know this stuff. And so I'm trying really hard to go into this mode where it's not enough to just do the work. I need to teach others to do the work and encourage them and gently move into this, because sometimes people have not been exposed to it and they're a little intimidated by it. Well, of course they are. It is a little intimidating. So, but I want to be a better teacher, and that is my goal going forward, is to learn how to explain what I'm doing in a simple manner. Teachers are special and they know how to do this. This is not my skill, but I already have, but I'm going to keep going, learning to do this. And I encourage all of us, especially as elders, to step it up a little. We need to go out of our comfort zone and do it more. We need to encourage more by showing people, but it takes patience and time. but I'm working on that. I have other people I know that are better teachers, but I have the knowledge though, you see, and that's what I think that's something I need to do. And we all should. We should not be the keepers of these secrets. So how to teach and how to explain it, well, I'm working on that.
That's awesome. You do have to, that's one of my critiques too, is you have to develop the next generation. I managed to graduate from high school without ever taking a home ec class.
Yeah, me either. They didn't offer it. And again, I'm not that young, so this stopped a long time ago.
Yeah, it
But
did.
it's so there's a lot of different things that go on. I think that sewing in general is a fantastic lifelong craft. It is not unlike cooking, and I do all kinds of things like that. Like I like canning too, and I do all kinds of stuff about that because you know what? It's okay to have your everyday life be really great, even though you have a job. And you know, I was busy and I didn't do a lot of things, but I guess this is kind of on the topic. Well, why should I repair things? You know, what is it? But I think sewing and repair are cousins, but they are not the same. Repair is what people needed from me. This is the skill that people wanted and needed, and it is very economical. This is one where okay, you can't make some money on this. And it started not money in doing it, but you save money in your home. Doing repairs for others, I'm not sure. There are people that do it, but it's I'm not sure it's super easy to do this. But anyway, in your own home, it started with this type. As a working mother, my kid would come home and he'd like have his stuff all torn up, and you know it's really aggravating to me. But I found that it actually, you know, I was busy, so time is a thing, and if you don't have time, cut yourself some slack, find someone who will do it for you, exchange labor. But I found that with uh, when I could repair that identical pair of clothing, it saved me time because I did not have to find that identical thing for them to wear. They would wear that pair of pants if it was fixed. They would wear it if they liked it. And if there's another one, the next kid is going to like it too because the first one liked it. They're both going to like it. You're going to save so much time by not having to replace that identical thing. In the morning when they're going to school, there's going to be no drama because they will wear that thing. And this just replicate that across coats, pants, jackets, shirts, all of it. It just saved me time by fixing stuff that I already had. It does save money, obviously, because you don't have to go and get more. But to me, that was it. Like they have it, they like it. I'm just going to keep it because they'll wear it, and the other one will too. But sewing in general, sometimes it's not economical. If you buy fabric, it's expensive. But I get a lot of fabric thrifted, and you know what? If I'm spending money on fabric, that's just between me and my bank account. It gives me pleasure to have a garment that I know that I really like and that fits me really good, and then I really like it. So I have no excuse about I'll buy it. I thrift fabric a lot though too because I find it at estate sales and things like that. And so you can be economical in that way, but repair is where it's at. That's the one that actually will you will save money with that one. So that's kind of like, well, why should we? Should we? Yeah, we should. It's
Absolutely.
environmentally important as well. That's kind of a no-brainer in that if you keep things, you don't throw things away, it is keeping them in use is hands down the most important thing, far more than recycling or any of those other things. They don't even come close to simply not replicating. So that's kind of a no-brainer. But from personal home economics standpoint, I didn't take that either. But I think it's really important to do your own repairs at home. And this is like every kind of repair. I do electronics repairs, I do house repairs, we do car repairs, we do all of them. Why is sewing so uh, neglected? It shouldn't be. Just like cooking, you should be able to cook your own food. It's not that hard. You can make it simple or you can make it hard. And repairs and clothing are the same, simple or hard. Hard ones, have someone else do. Simple ones, do yourself. But I get if you're busy though, when you're a mom, it's hard. But just remember, in the morning, when you least want to hear it, they're going to put those pants on right there, and they're not going to fight with you. It's great.
You're singing my song.
Yeah, but I also understand why people don't, and I want to alleviate the reasons why they don't. The biggest one is not lack of desire; it's just from lack of knowledge or skill. And we can help with some of the skill ones. Some take many years to get really good at, but just maybe send that one to the tailor, but handle the little ones yourself for a while till you get good.
Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to bring up or?
Yeah, I got one more, and that is some of the most satisfying repairs. I think there's sometimes there's a lot of emotion with our clothing, and I think it's totally fine to use clothing as part of a healing process or just for sentimental sake. Why do we have to be so practical all the time? If you have something that you've been wearing since high school and it gives you joy to wear this out on a tour, or out on a hike or just out around town, why not keep it? And why do you always feel like you have to not have things? If someone gives you a garment, and then of course the really touching ones are, I was widowed at one point and I kept clothing that belonged to my husband. And I think that every once in a while I'll see one of those people out on the tour with me, or they'll come to me, or I'll see a bag on my doorstep of a garment like this. It's a jacket that belonged to a husband or a sweater that belonged to a wife or something, and they want to wear it themselves, but they can't because the zipper pocket is busted or the front and they can't. So I'll fix those. To me, those are the most satisfying and those beautiful repairs because they assist us in some way. Just a simple object brings a lot of comfort and it helps to ease them along their journey. And I'm all about that. So those are my most satisfying repairs. They're not often very difficult, but it's okay to have a particular object that assists you as a crutch or like a cane does when you're walking, to have this thing with you. And if it needs repair, you should fix it. I have other objects that are like this too. Like I have an old coffee pot. It's my dad's coffee pot. I make coffee with that once in a while, the percolator thing, and makes that noise. And it just instantly brings me back. And so, yeah, I had that thing rewired. And not only does it work pretty good, it also just, it gives me a little quality to my life. And I think that that one intrinsic property of garments and clothing and repair is not to be overlooked. It's very powerful, and it's um, something we can definitely incorporate into our lives if we need it. It's there.
That's beautifully said. Thank you. Well, this
You're welcome. You can break the middle.
this has been a great conversation, and maybe we'll have you back again sometime. And if you're ever passing through Montana on one of your
Oh, I'll come by.
trips,
Yeah, we need to talk about the secret lives of sewing machines.
yes,
That'd be
yes.
fun.
Well,
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
I really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you. I appreciate the feedback and emails that I got this week. I got some excellent suggestions for future guests, so I will work on some of those and see if I can convince some of those suggested people to be guests on the podcast. As always, if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, you can fill out the guest form at the website. The website is www.thestraightstitchpodcast.com, and that's where the show notes for each episode live. You can email me at janet@janetzabo.com, and you can also visit my website, which is at www.janetzabo.com, and that has links to my knitting website and to my blog, where I post pictures of my sewing projects and talk about life in Montana. So if you want to see some of what's been going on here, that's the place to take a look. And I think that'll do it for this episode. So until the next time, I hope you have a great week and that you get to go sew something.